join you today.
Yes, I am so excited that you are here. We've been trying to bring you on to the show for a while. And I know you and I had a conversation years ago after we both finished at United, but this is a timely discussion today. So I'm glad
Yes,
that you could
ma'am.
join us.
Yes, what an honor to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's just jump right in. Welcome to Talking with Dr. T.
Thank you.
My first question for you is, Dr. Brian, you serve at the intersection of counseling, and I want to just kind of put professional counseling and pastoral counseling because sometimes they are different, but they overlap. So you serve at the intersection of counseling, ministry, and chaplaincy. Can you share a bit about your vocational journey and what led you to integrate these roles in your work?
All right. And thank you, Dr. T, again for the invitation. And I know we, as I said, we'll talk a little bit about that. But what has really, I kind of honored and privileged to be here, but what has really been a pivotal point in this integrative model is when I was a chaplain, I knew that the ministry of presence was very important. But then I also felt that there was another voice that I wasn't trained to do beyond the ministry of presence. So ministry of presence means in clinical work and clinical chaplaincy, you're there present with someone that is in trauma, someone that's in the hospital, someone that's really going through. But what else can we also offer them other than just presence? And prayer a lot of times is what people go to. So when I was a resident at Emory, at the Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, I began to say, I need to take a class on working with counseling and just to get some other interventions and to produce another voice other than just presence in my experience. So as I began to take those classes, I began to see how the need was for chaplains to be able to not just have ministry of presence, but also what other things can we look at to offer that extra support and that extra layer of support. And as I began to look at that in my career, I said, I need to get licensed. I need to really go through the process of licensure. And I really have seen also in the world of chaplaincy, I've seen many changes, Dr. T, in working with people because it seems like even just an example at the VA, they really want you to be multicultural, as you taught and as you always have used, but also just multifaceted in providing that support. So let me just give a quick example of what I'm talking about when I mean integration. When I'm working with veterans, for example, a veteran may have a substance treatment issue. A veteran may have trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder. Many of our veterans have isolation, anxiety, stress. And yes, the chaplain is called there to be able to offer that support, but also the role of a chaplain in a hospital is also to be able to refer to other disciplines. And if you don't have that scope of expertise or that knowledge of able to do that, you're not as effective as a chaplain, because you should be able to not be maybe a subject matter expert, but you should know some basic knowledge about mental illness. You should know some basic knowledge about what it means to have grief and loss and maybe clinically depressed, not just grief and loss, but there is something called clinical depression that many people have and experience even with that. And so I wanted to be well-rounded in what I was offering, and also knowing that there are different facets, but it's all integrated and it's all connected. But it's that awareness piece is the main piece that I really felt that I needed to get more training and to be more competent in my craft or my ministry. Craft just means ministry for me, ministry as I offer to others.
Yes, I love that. And Brian, when we were in school, you and I did, we were just really advocating for our classmates to understand what is professional counseling, what is chaplaincy, right? What is CPE, right?
Yes.
Those
What is
are also
pastoral care?
yes, and those were separate parts, but you are at a place now where you're in alignment, where you are able to put those integrated pieces together, right?
Yes.
But let's help our listeners understand the individual parts for a second. How would you
Cool.
define what you talked about chaplaincy being the ministry of care? But help somebody who's listening understand the difference of help seeking for a chaplain versus somebody who's a professional counselor.
Sure. Okay. And so I would start off with, and I want to use the word lay minister,
Yes.
just active listening. All right. They're having a problem. Someone's coming to you. You can actively listen. You're not always trained to solve because you're not there to solve anyway, but you're just there to listen. So pastoral care is another level where we're actively listening, but we also offering with that ministry of presence. So what I always tell people is I'm not here to fix anything, but I'm here to be connected to your human experience. So that would be a level of pastoral care. I can't tell you I know how you feel, because that's offensive to people. So please don't go around telling people I know how you feel. You can say I can identify, but I don't
Yes.
know how you feel. But
Yes.
that's pastoral care level. Pastoral counseling is more long term, but it's also dealing with also the interventions, the evidence-based interventions. But under pastoral care is more the spiritual part that we add into those things. But then when you get into professional counseling, you're more advanced in knowing what the risks are,
Yes.
because a lot of people are coming to us suicidal ideation. That means they want to take their life and sometimes want to harm other people. So
Yes.
we didn't look at it from a whole different perspective. So just to make it simple in some capacity, it is complex, but very simple is active listening. We are here
Yes.
to listen. We're here to minister all of its ministry, but we're here to listen. When you move to that pastoral care level, you're doing more the presence, identifying. You're able to give some levels of support of words, at times, but it's about whoever you're ministering to and watching your boundaries. When you move to pastoral counseling, you're doing more of the intervention parts of counseling, but still from a spiritual perspective. But when you move to and you're trained in all the fields and you're moving to that other layer of mental health counseling, professional counseling, licensed counseling, you're doing therapy. You're doing more integrative type therapy where you're doing some of the real work of trauma. Not that
Yes.
any of those are not dealing with trauma, but you're also able to know some of those risks and those considerations. Because when you're doing that type of level of care and that work, you have to be trained and you have to be aware of opening up those wounds and what to do with those wounds.
I thank you. And thank you for just kind of providing the breakdown of each, but we're really talking about integration. But you said something that really struck for me, Dr. Brian.
Mhm.
One, ministry of presence. Even if I'm a professional counselor, I still have to be present, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
we all have to engage in active listening, seeking to understand, right?
Yes,
Walking alongside someone in their darkest times and
yes,
helping to shine a light, but not fixing it, right? Just walking
correct.
alongside. We talk about the counselor as a person, the counselor as a professional, the minister as a person, the clergy
Yes,
as a person, the
yes,
clergy as a shepherd. Why
yes.
is self-awareness so important to both of the roles of a chaplain and a counselor?
Oh God, that's a vital part and then let's go to our training.
Yes.
And CPE, it is reflective work, but it's peer work. A lot of times you have a supervisor, but it's peer work. All right. So you're doing a lot of those things. And so in clinical work, we also talk about what we call the parallel process.
Yes.
So how you conduct yourself in supervision is how you're going to conduct yourself in the act of ministry or as a counselor. So even with the mental health counseling, we always look at ourselves because in some sense we are the identified patient when we're talking about supervision. And that is the key to anyone that's doing any kind of work, even if it's and because all the work is integrative, all the work is important. But even if you're doing pastoral care, you still need to be under some level of supervision
Yes.
and consultation and collaboration. And I'll break those things down in a few minutes. But those things are very vital, that you're getting feedback and that you're open to feedback and open to awareness. So in pastoral care, we learn from our peer group. But in mental health counseling, when you're being trained, you're also learning from your peer group, but you're learning from your professors. But we also are encouraged, and all therapists, all ministers, everyone should have a counselor, should have a counselor, and also should have some collaborative group or individuals that you can share and get consultation. So consultation and supervision is always vital along all different components that we work in. But that awareness piece, I'm telling you, and we call it psychodynamic work. And so I supervise a lot of different, I supervise CPE students or residents. I supervise counselors that are, in school, internship, and also associate counselors. And a lot of times they are checkbox, I call it, but they are not aware of their own issues. And one thing that they're not aware of is transference and countertransference, and how that is always at play. What is that, Dr. Jones? I know you're asking that question. Countertransference, just in a nutshell, is feelings and thoughts that you maybe as the person that's providing care, and then you turn it around, those feelings, thoughts, attitudes. And we have to always be aware, because our number one goal is not to allow our own issues cause harm. So do no harm, even in ministry. And I want to sound the alarm at that, because some of us, unfortunately, are doing harm to others by our messages, by our words, and we're not even aware of the harm that we're doing, or what we call in seminary, bleeding on the congregation.
That's right.
And there's a lot of that going on. So in a nutshell, self-awareness helps us to be more aware of ourselves, but also so we won't harm others in our intentions of ministry or counseling or just being present.
That's right. I really like that. Do no harm. And that's in ministry as well. And I always say, if you can't help them, at least don't harm them by your lack of awareness, by what you are spilling over. And what I appreciate, I'm going to lead into the CPE. But when we talk, I remember in seminary, what I loved about our program, even though I think back when I was writing the paper at the time, I was like, oh, I'm good. But that very first paper, when we had to look back over our life and recognize any unfinished business, right? So that we finish unfinished business, so that we don't spill, but also that unfinished business was designed for us to identify where God is calling us in our ministry, right? Talk about CPE, because I know when I'm providing clinical supervision for professional counselors at whatever level, internships, licensure, when they come to supervision, they're coming, I already know they know the theories and the techniques, and I'll help them with that, but I'm really focused on them. And what was it like for them to be in session with this client? What was happening with them? So talk about unfinished business, bleeding, and the benefits of CPE, clinical pastoral education.
And a lot of times in ministry, I've been in ministry since I was 12. I'm not going to say what age I am now, but most of my life. And the bleeding, I'm going to use this image that a lot of pastors, unfortunately, are traumatized, are hurt. We're human as well. Ministers, chaplains, counselors, all of us are in this human experience. But a lot of times we're not aware of our own trauma, our own childhood issues, what we call ACE, adverse childhood experiences. A lot of times we're not making connections among what has happened to us, not just childhood, but also adulthood. What type of relationships that we have, what type of things have we encountered? Church hurt. You go to one church and you were hurt by the pastor or by people in the church, and you go to another church, but you're just moving, but never identifying what really happened. Trauma informed is what we call it, that you are now aware and really asking questions about what happened to you, what's really going on. So CPE is the beginning stages, in my opinion, of bringing you to a place of awareness. Because a lot of times, even in ministry and seminary, we don't really have groups where we're being honest, or
Yes.
groups where we are safe and psychologically and spiritually safe to share. But CPE offers that intro to be able to get feedback, to be able to get support. And we write papers called verbatims. I don't really call them verbatims anymore, conversations, but I call them presentations.
Yes.
You know, that we're presenting a case, but the case is not always about who you provided ministry to or support to. The case is really in supervision, and in your peer and individual supervision, you really are talking and dealing with the identified patient, which is you at this time.
That's right.
The case only gets you to expose and to bring out some of these things that have been buried. And that's another thing, Dr. T, that even in we're talking about CPE and awareness and consultation, a lot of our ministers and pastors and leaders have buried their trauma, and we put on an act in some sense, you know, and that's a whole nother dynamic, whole nother conversation, but we're hurting. We wonder why, and we don't really find out a lot of times until something's exposed.
Yes.
And then they're like, oh, I can't believe the pastor did this. I can't believe he or she did this. But yet then you already, so we need to have churches and places that are preventative.
Yes.
Where we know all of us, including myself, Dr. T too, all of us have been traumatized. All of us have been marinated in suffering and just living in America. Sometimes it can just be suffering and challenges and discrimination and sexism and racism and all kinds of phobias. We all have been facing some aspects of that on different level. Many of us have post-traumatic stress disorder, but how is that also showing up in CPE? How does this show up in your ministry? How does this show up in your preaching? How does this show up with how you deal with conflict, how you deal with church members that don't agree with the vision of the pastor? Yes. How do you conduct yourself in moments where you're being attacked, but can you still, in faith, of course, number one, but number two, in expertise, knowing how to handle people and knowing the difference between just people and just your own developmental growth.
Yes.
So really putting that out there, but CPE helps to take that lens off and expose you to getting, and that's the thing, the bottom line, Dr. T, we do not like to get feedback.
Yeah.
We do not like to hear the mirror of ourselves. But I'm going to say this, Dr. T. Yes. What you see in others and you got an issue with in other people is a lot of times an issue in yourself. I'm going to repeat that because that is treatable.
Say that for the person in the back, for the people in the back.
What you have trouble with someone else with and you don't like something about them, generally there's also something in you that is also identified that is a challenge. And we need to be aware of those things because we harm people in ministry when we're not aware. And we also become dangerous. There is some dangerous theologies and there's some dangerous ministry going on that is harmful, that is toxic, that is gaslighting, that is destroying people and also leading people down a negative way when we not aware of the harm that we cause because we haven't dealt with or continue to work with our own issues.
Absolutely. I call that projection. When you're projecting out to someone else, it's about your own self. And, and here's something I'm just going to say, a side note, because not everybody's going to do CPE. We know that there is a stigma of help-seeking behavior for clergy and ministry leaders going to counseling. It's getting better. It has gotten better. But one of the things that I'm doing now is working with churches as a whole, but individual clergy, providing leadership formation spaces for sustainable leadership. It's not counseling, right? It's not the traditional executive coaching, but it's a place and a space for what you are just talking about, to be able to work on myself and identify patterns that might not be sustainable that I need to change so that I can continue to be the sustainable leader that God has called me to. So I really appreciate that.
Yes, and that's very vital that, you know, creating spaces, because where does the pastor go to be honest?
Yes.
You know, you can't go to your congregation and tell them everything about yourself. You probably won't have a church.
Yes.
But on a serious note, many of us, and we saw it, Dr. T, during COVID,
Yes.
when pastors and ministers and religious and spiritual leaders were not able to preach and be in their churches. Of course, the congregation, you know, definitely suffered in some capacity, in many capacities, but also with the ministry, the ministers, the clergy suffered during that time because a lot of them were not used to ever not going to church almost for 2 years and not able to do that. And then being on a screen, we had to learn technology, how to be, all of that is traumatic. And even putting on a mask that I have here, that I'm in
Yes.
the hospital,
Yes.
that I have a mask, is traumatic. When we
Yes.
don't even see facial expressions and all of those type of things. So just continuing to be aware that we're still living in a lot of the effects of COVID now, potentials of war and different things that are going on, that people are feeling threatened and in fear and anxiety. And what does the, you know, clergy is feeling it, but what does the church do?
Yes.
What what
Yes.
what avenues can we offer to be there for ourselves as well as for others?
Yep. Okay. So you're leading right into now, what can the church do? We've talked about who you
Yes,
are.
we have.
We've talked about the integrated, holistic understanding of care. We've
Yes.
clarified roles. Let's talk about the church. Historically, the church has been the first place people go to in times of crisis and distress. So, how do you see the church's role in supporting mental and emotional health today? And has that changed in our current context, or is it the same? So, how do you see the church's role?
Okay. A theologian, but also as a practitioner, I'm gonna say it that way. I think we've made strides, but I also see this type of moving forward. But then when things don't produce, a lot of times financially the way that people want, they then resort back to what is comfortable and what is, you know, what is. And what I mean by that is I do see the stained glass ceiling for mental health. That's what I'm gonna say has been cracked, but it's not destroyed because people resort back to what is common. And I'm not seeing a lot of therapeutic work in many places, not no places now. That would be false, but in a lot of places because churches are trying to survive.
Yes.
And mental health ministry is not advantageous and it's not the popular ministry for us to be talking about. Now, people want to say go get therapy and call Jesus and call a therapist, which just that is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
We do need therapy. We do need to call Jesus, definitely. But, you know, we need to be careful about the therapy that we call because they need to understand some things about you and be multiculturally competent. Thank you, Dr. T, for
That's
that
right.
word.
Yes.
But the church is really at a, if you really look at it, it's really at a wonderful opportunity because systems are failing.
Yeah.
Healthcare, insurance, we can go down the list. Different things are not there like they used to be. But guess what? The church is in community.
Yes.
And maybe part of God's call is we got to go back to the basics where the church offers. Now, I'm not saying every church got to have a counseling center, but come on, you can't tell me with technology that you cannot collaborate with someone who's licensed and understand your theology. And those are the, you know, some of the things, considerations, cultural competencies or considerations that they understand your theology and your walk. You understand? But they, you know, the collaborations, we got technology, like even with this, that you can't tell me you can't do nothing. Mental health first aid, and we'll put that in the link to. If you can't do nothing else, take mental health first aid. That is the beginning stages, but it's fun, it's interactive, things that you can do. But I want us to really begin to think about prevention.
Yes.
Let's not wait till crisis hit before we can offer pastoral care, offer a listening ear, offer a group. And I'm not taking away from the preaching, but preaching is part of what we do, but it's not all. We need to offer some type of groups that are led by people that have been vetted and trained, some type of grief groups, because grief But also another group that we can do, which I call is low-hanging fruit, is people are fearful of death.
Yes.
And I recently preached at a church and I brought it up and it was total silence.
Yep.
Even some of the quote elder senior saints were like, came up to me and said, I have a fear of death.
Right.
You know, and we need to be really working with that fear because that fear hinders life.
Yep.
You know, so there are just a couple little considerations. Partnering with a licensed mental health professional is always, even for clergy to be in therapy, but also for your church to be able to get some consultation and some collaboration. If you can't have a counseling center at your church, mental health first aid would be also mental health workshops.
Yes.
Anxiety, stress, getting a mental health professional to come in, a chaplain to come in and talk about stress, talk about anxiety, talk about workplace violence and toxic environments and things like that. How to co-parent.
Yes.
How to, you know, all of this is under them that is dealing with our mental health and our mental wellness.
Absolutely.
And then another one that people really having financial challenges that we have and that causes, and substance treatment.
Yes.
And addictions. That's another one that we really don't. So just having workshops and awareness and education. If you don't do no more, you're providing education. And also encourage the all of the clergy to include it in your messages. You know, because the Bible is full of people and problems and Jesus, you know, and God healing and working with us. But there's a mental health message even in the midst of all of that. And if you don't know how to look at that lens, you got Dr. T, you got myself, and many other professionals that you can consult with.
Yeah, I love everything that you're saying. So, you know, some of the listening audience has heard me say this before. Jesus asked the man at the pool of Bethesda, do you want to be made whole?
Do you want to be made whole?
Be well, right? When we talk about that word whole, wellness, right? That Greek word is sozo, and it's connected to the Hebrew word shalom, which is peace. Do you want peace? When we talk about wellness, there's different models of wellness. There's mind, right? There's physical wellness, there's financial wellness, there's occupational wellness, there's social. So if we are asking our congregants, do they want to be made well? Then just like you said, we will provide these workshops and education and partnerships that are connected to those domains of wellness, right?
Exactly.
And somebody could reach out to you, and we're going to talk about that at the end, how somebody can get in contact with you. Myself, I come from Mount Airy Baptist Church in Pittsburgh. Pastor Curtis wanted to have a counseling center and counseling ministry right on site. We could do that. It's a mega church. So we have licensed professional counselors, interns, marriage and family therapists, but not every church can do that. But in your congregation, I bet you have some clinicians. I was just up in Newark at Mount Pleasant Church. In their congregation, there were 3 clinicians. Pastor Raheem Thomas says, we are about to start something right here, so we want to have that training. But you know what he did first before he's offering the training to the congregants? He's providing training to the clergy regarding their own mental health.
That's the best way.
Many different ways to do that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, but one more resource, Dr. T, I want to make sure and we put it, is NAMI. They are all over. I mean, they have money. I mean, not saying money, but they have resources, let's say it that way, to be able to come to your church and to bring literature. And also, I mean, they really are a good source. And even in rural communities, they, you know, NAMI, so it's NAMI. And we'll put something in the link for you to get it. But reach out to your local NAMI. They are National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they're able to provide those type of support. And as I said, mental health first aid is another one. They're doing it online now. I'm an instructor for it as well for over the years, and I do that. That is one-on-one. If you're going to work with mental health, you're going to work with pastoral care in the church, setting up a mental health ministry. Everyone needs to be trained in Mental Health First Aid USA.
So you're talking about increasing knowledge. You're talking about ministry and chaplaincy and counseling within the scope of your training. So,
Yes.
let's talk about ethic and professional boundaries now. So for
Yes.
pastors and ministry leaders who are often the first to hear about congregant struggles, what ethical considerations should they keep in mind? And how do I know when to work with that person and provide pastoral care and counseling versus referring?
Yes, wonderful. And I think that we have to know clear boundaries and our scope of expertise. We have to remain ethical. And most of ACA, American Counseling Association, you go Marriage and Family, all of these people, and Dr. T, I think we're on to something.
Yeah.
Where is our code of ethics for ministry? You know, for ministers, the church has got code of ethics. I mean, that's something that, okay, I just got a thought. Okay, I'm going to come back, but that's a thought of helping churches develop a code of ethics, period. But anyway, I digress. All right, but part of it is having that, being aware of psychological safety.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
that is another thing. Also being preventative about suicide. Don't just, you know, I was at a local church years ago, and the person had showed signs of suicidal ideation. So I happened to be in the church. It was a mega church at the time, and they came and found me and was like, "This person is suicidal," And so when I got there, they were praying over them. They had a prayer circle around them, and I was like, "Okay, that's wonderful, but has anybody assessed?" I mean, we're going to praying, but we do you know what you're praying for? Do you know what you're dealing with? Because also that could have been a risk, because they could have also caused harm with someone else. So I actually intervened and got the person, and we called, it wasn't 988 then. We called the helpline. They came out and they assessed, and then I did a training and a debriefing to show what to do. Pastors, you're going to see more and more people coming in with layers of issues, and especially suicide, because sometimes the last place that they're going to turn to before they do harm to themselves or to others is to show up on a Sunday or show up on a Bible study. And we know, we've seen evidence that people do show up, and we want them to come. But my question is, how prepared are you? If someone was to walk into your church with a mental illness and showing signs of what do? You're going to pray, but you need to be aware of what to do and be preventative and have a plan in place. Who is in place that's competent and trained to be able to handle those as they're coming in? So our scope of expertise, our psychological safety, being aware of what we call dual relationships. Right. So you all that are pastors that are doing pastoral counseling, you have to be aware of these dual relationships in the church. You're the pastor, but yet you're their counselor too. And they're hearing you on a Sunday.
Right.
That could be a red flag, because they could think you're preaching about them. And some pastors, I've seen it, do pastoral counseling, or and then they all of a sudden they end up the subject of the message, and we've seen it. So these are certain things that we want to be. And also the power of referrals.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to refer them to someone so have a referral system. Don't wait till they come to you and you need to refer them and you don't have a vetted relationship system or referral system when you can refer them to someone that you're connected with. So we have to do our own research in that, but also for safety, we have to be aware of our own issues and how we can also be a hindrance to people's care. So when we're looking at these considerations, when we're looking at these ethical, we all are on ethics. All we got as ministers is ethics. And once you lose that ethical trust, trust is another factor. I like the UCC church. They teach a class that's required for all ministers on boundaries, the United Church of Christ. You have to have boundary training.
That's right.
It is intense, but it's intense to be preventative of anything that could also be a legal lawsuit. Also, the last thing is being aware of reporting mandated reporting in your state and in your areas. And most states, ministers, clergy, chaplains are mandated reporters. That means child abuse or child neglect, elderly abuse,
elderly, older adults, yes.
Any kind of, things that we see, and sometimes you could be subpoenaed.
Yes.
And knowing that's and understanding that aspect of even in ministry, the risk of ministry is confidentiality. Absolutely. And understanding the components of when you can break that confidentiality.
Yeah, I love everything you're saying. So let me just, because I want the listening audience and those who watch the recording, if you are not aware of these terms, then you need to make sure you get training. Dual relationships, confidentiality, privacy. You are mandated reporters. Have you had any training in mandated reporting? Practicing within the scope of your training, right? Then we can get into the skills, the attending, the listening. But if you have not had this training and you are providing pastoral care, you're providing spiritual care or pastoral counseling, then it is important that you arm yourself with this knowledge and your training. And you said something, Dr. Brian, that I think I want to make sure everybody understands. What happens out there in the world does not stop at the door of the church. So those things out there are coming into the church. And so it is important to understand who's coming in your doors, and are you prepared to provide the support or partner with organizations in the community to give them support? So
have a plan. Don't wait till they show up and don't have a plan. You got to be strategic. And pastors and ministers, it's going to take money.
Yes.
I mean, this is something we don't want to deal with, because I've been, highly offended by some pastors. Oh, come in for free. You don't work for free.
Right.
And you get what you also pay for, but you can't tell me that you pay all these other people, but you can't pay for therapy or pay for a consultation. This is a life-changing situation, but also consultation with Dr. T, myself, and others that are trained in all these different fields. We also can provide that consultation and help you think through for when they show up. But be prepared, be preventative. Let's not wait till there's a crisis and then wonder what we're going to do. Be ready and be prepared and know what you're doing and know that there's a plan, and we have a plan and we're going to execute, and people are trained to be in place. When there's a plan, because you're going to see more, and it takes more level. The pastor at one time maybe didn't need all these skills, but the pastor needs to be aware. I'm not saying they have to be the counselor and everything, but the pastor needs to be aware, and also he or she need to surround themselves around a collaborative group of people that understand those components of what we're talking about, because mental illness is not going away. Mental health, mental illness, trauma is not going away. It's continuing to be different layers. And I'm also seeing it in the veteran community. Shouts out to all my veterans out there. That's my heart and love. But I'm saying they are really impacted. And that's another veteran ministry, is something that we don't deal with. We kind of, that's just veterans. We just going to push them off to the side. But you'd be surprised at how much value veterans can bring to your congregation, but also understanding how to care for them. And that's a whole nother training too. Really, if you're not a veteran and pastoring and leading, you need to sit with consultation to understand how to care for the vets in your church.
Yeah, and that's so true. And if you don't, you got to have somebody on staff in the ministry to know. I just had that experience. We had a congregant whose grandson was a veteran that was seeking help and dealing with multiple layers of that wellness, that wholeness. And where do I go? What do I do? And so you got to have somebody on staff, because what's happening in our world right now, it is triggering. What's happening in our political, our cultural context, our social context is impacting the congregants and those who might drive or walk by our church and say, ooh, I'm going to go into those doors. And so, I think you asked, where are the code of ethics for the churches? And we're on to something. Some denominations have ethics, but I'm going to say this. Micah 6:8 He has shown you, O mortal,
Yeah,
what is good. Here's the code of ethics. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly,
justly.
to
Yeah.
love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. He was a loving, caring God who listened, right? And
Yes.
he asked each of those he interacted with, do you want to be whole in some way or another?
There you go. And that's the model. But you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your congregation to be competent. And let's stop with this level of ignorance, because that's what it is. When we have technology, we got AI, we got resources, but don't be afraid to get a consultation with someone that is vetted, trained. But I'm telling you, my prayer is that more of us, Dr. T, would go and get all of it. I don't, some of these people, I just want to do coaching, and there's nothing wrong with coaching. I just want to do pastoral counseling, but I don't want to go through licensure. Some people need, we need, you don't want a surgeon that ain't trained to operate on you, a doctor to give you medicine that is not, and it's the same with our spirits. When we talk about mind, body, and spirit in this, we want trained, competent people that know what they're doing and able to support, and God's people deserve it.
That's
I don't
right.
care how we look. God's people deserve the best, competent. You don't want somebody getting up preaching that don't know what they're talking about and things. So it's the same
right.
with your life and your ministry. And if you don't do anything else, seek consultation. If Dr. T and myself aren't available, we can refer you to other people, because we're on the move and doing stuff. We're not the only people, but look at what these people have and can offer. There's also shouts out to Virginia Union and the Lilly Foundation. I went on a retreat a couple last year. They invited me on a retreat for clergy, and that retreat, all expenses paid. You said to get there. So I don't know who to reach out to, but Virginia Union, there's other schools offer it too, but Virginia Union, my alma mater, STVU, shouts out. But they offered this retreat, and there were clinicians actually in charge of the retreat. And we did some basic therapy, some work. So shouts out to the Lilly Foundation. I'm not being paid by them, but shouts out to them. Shouts out to Virginia Union, Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union for offering that type of clergy retreat where we rested, we did mental health, but they also talked about what we could do in our churches. And I thank God for opportunities like that.
Yeah. Oh, and shout out to Virginia Union, Dean Gunn. Shout out to United Seminary, Dr. Croft, who weaves that in with his doctoral students. So we got to start at the seminary and work our way up in our denominational ministries. And so, Dr. Brian, you mentioned something, and I don't want to go by it so quick. Suicide and suicidal ideation. We have to be open to talking about this at the church. Suicidal ideations and death by suicide is an equal opportunity issue. It does not discriminate. Talk a little bit more about the importance of us having these conversations as faith communities.
Yeah, and see, it's something that we don't really want to, it's taboo, because we don't want to deal with it. And a lot of times we don't know what to do. And then we use that as a block, a barrier to do nothing. You're going to see more, unfortunately, pastors, leaders, ministers, you're going to see more people that want to end this experience. You're going to see as people are struggling and going through their own trauma. It's not just our veterans, it's other people that have post-traumatic stress disorder, all different kinds of issues. You're going to see more people want to end. I mean, they don't see hope. They don't see any meaning. And our job is to help them to provide meaning, hope, and some type of connection. Notice what I said, hope, meaning, and some type of connection. Everybody in some capacity, that's part of our human nature and our survival, our needs. But this suicide prevention is which I think I do like about the VA. We do really do a lot of training in suicide prevention and also the assessment of what does it mean. Mental health first aid also deals with what to do. Mental health first aider. So what questions do you ask? Because a lot of times we're afraid to ask, Are you suicidal? Do you want to take your life? I mean, we're afraid, we tiptoe around it, but we need to really get trained, because you're going to see more people, and we owe it to community to help support those that are having those thoughts and feelings, and also saving communities, because a lot of times when they want to, they're at that place, they also will take other people with them.
Yeah.
And that's why we see some of these other things that are going on. And so we owe it to ourselves to have a listening ear to
Yes.
what sometimes is not being said, but is being said, but
Yes.
also not being afraid once you train to ask the questions, because you also know if they are, you know how to, you already have a plan, and you know how to get them the help that they need. You ought to invite them to get the help that they need.
Yeah.
And so suicide prevention is another training I know Dr. T, myself can do in consultation or refer out, and to many other people, but learn about suicide prevention. Notice the word prevention. Don't
Yes.
wait till someone is gone, and then at the funeral we talk, oh, I can't believe they did this. I thought they were happy. I didn't see this. But also with your loved ones and your family members and community members, watch out for signs. Someone is showing signs of not being themselves, something don't seem right. Continue to ask that questions, continue to be present, continue to do a welfare check is what we call it. It's no harm in checking, but take everything seriously.
That's right.
Some of my friends look at me like, what do you mean you asking these? I'm going to ask the question, because I want to be present as much as I can. If you do need support and you don't want to disclose, I'm going to at least say I did my part. But I'm telling you, even recently, in some of the work that I do, we've seen recent suicide. Where it was death by suicide is the term we use now, death by suicide. And unfortunately, the families are left, and no judgment against them, but let's be preventative. Let's talk about it and get the professionals in to do a workshop, get the professionals in to talk about suicide prevention. You know, you don't have to talk about everything, because if you're not competent, but have someone offer something where they can share, and these are the signs and symptoms of what this may look like, so we can save all of us. And that's part of our salvation. It's not just afterlife, but it's also how we're experiencing things in this world, this natural world of what we are living in now.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Bryan, we know that if someone wants to become a professional counselor, they need to enroll in a master's level program or a doctoral level program, get their supervision, right? If somebody wants to become a chaplain, what's the process of becoming a chaplain, and what's the process of pursuing CPE?
All right. So to become a chaplain, in most arenas, you need units, what we call of CPE, clinical pastoral education. And most units are 300 hours of clinical work under supervision and a practice ministry. So they have, when I was in CPE 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they ended up, it was mostly in the hospitals. Now we have community-based. Sometimes when I get time, run a community-based program to be able to help with CPE. So that's that clinical lens that you can do, but it's generally 4 units of CPE in most cases. The VA has changed some of their rules now. You can come in basically not having CPE and then getting it within a certain amount of time. So there are different rules. Also something called board certification. So there are different agencies, organizations, you can Google it, too, that are when you're board certified. I'm actually board certified in 4 different organizations. I just love being board certified more than one time, I guess. But 5 actually. But board certification means you've met competencies. Right. Notice what we're saying. It's the same for professional counselors, and there are competencies that you've shown, that you went before a committee and that you've done your work, and you have some sense of practice and know what you're doing in some capacity in your scope of expertise. So chaplaincy generally requires those CPE units as well as board certification if you're going to be a fully what we call board certified chaplain. But there are ways, but CPE, you don't have to just go into chaplaincy to take a CPE unit. I mean, CPE is just a wonderful way, even if you're an experienced pastor, you'd be surprised what you can learn when you start looking at yourself and your development, even in ministry and in life, and how does that impact your ministry of what you are doing now. So CPE is always, you know, and I can give you more consultation. We'll put some of their different brands, as we would say, of CPE. At one time, there was only 1 or 2 or 3. Now there's about 4 or 5 national, and I used to be the president of one of them, you know, that are out there, and you find the brand of CPE that will fit for you. But they have community-based ones, online programs. We have several ones I'm going to put in the chat that are also multicultural. Sankofa CPE is one I'm going to definitely put out with my sister Danielle, Danny Bahuro. I'm putting her program out there. Brenda Wallace, you can Google her. I'm putting her program out there. If you are Black and Brown, bio, you know, those ones, ethnic ones that are really my sisters in that. And of course, I run programs from time to time, and you can definitely check it out on my website and also on my Facebook page. But there's many ones you can get that CPE certified to be able to go into chaplaincy if that's your desire.
Absolutely. And I love it. And for those of you that are looking to be integrated in the line, like Dr. Brian Jones, you got to start with those different tracks and then bring it together and merge it together.
And Dr. T, T, just real quick, I also belong to a wonderful organization that is a CPE organization, but I am one of the commissioners for the Spiritually Integrated Psychotherapists, formerly known as the Association of Pastoral Councils, that was out for many years, that's well known. So I'm so honored to serve as a commissioner of the ACPE. You can Google it, ACPE, Spiritually Integrated Psychotherapists. And for counselors that want that spiritually integrated work, we have what they call a SIP program, Spiritually Integrated Training Program, where if you're an LPC, if you're a marriage and family, if you're a psychologist, doctor, nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse, all of those, you can take this spiritually integrated work and be able to help. Because that's one thing in closing, Dr. T, is people, even counselors, do not understand people's spiritual and theological makeup. We don't really, you know, a lot of my colleagues do not understand church, don't understand church, don't understand spirituality and how religious factors have played a role in the lens that our people that we counsel that they see. So we really want to be open, even as clinicians. If you're interested in that spiritually integrated work, you can look at programs there. I offer that. I know Dr. T offers that spiritually integrated work for mental health professionals. And we're going to continue to offer that, because if you're not dealing with the spiritual part of what people are going through and understanding it, you're not fully doing ministry, and sometimes you're not fully doing counseling, and you're not culturally competent, because we are mind, we're body, and we're also spiritual in some capacity. Means meaning and strength, how you find meaning and strength, but how that also plays a role. Somebody's theology also plays a role in how they view God, how they view themselves, and how they view others and the world.
Absolutely. So we're going to put that link on in the chat, on the screen as well. And I will say, because you know this is for anyone, but we also have for professional counselors. Dr. Brian mentioned American Counseling Association. We have a division called the ASERVIC, the Association of Spiritual, Ethical, and Religious Values in Counseling. Become a member. The conferences this year is going to be online. It's a virtual conference, and just learn about faith development and learn about the integration. So you cannot leave this show today and say you don't know where I can go and get support. So that's wonderful. Dr. Brian, this has been a
Yes, it
wonderful
has.
conversation, and I know this is not by accident, the timing of the show and us coming
Yes.
together. So as we come to an end, is there anything else you would like to say that or share that you haven't said or shared?
Yeah, well, I just want to encourage everyone. I'm not here to beat the church down. I love the church. I love ministry, but you owe it to yourself to invest. And invest means time, sometimes our talent, but also our finances. And do not be afraid to invest, because you're going to get a return on your investment with training, with knowledge. But let's create preventative congregations and communities where we're not waiting until crisis hit, but let's be prepared. Even if someone transitions, a will is preparation. All right. And that's what we don't want to really talk about being prepared, but you owe it to yourself. But everything is an investment of time or money or talent or just different things. And so don't be afraid to reach out. How you can reach me, the best way to reach me would be, I do have a Facebook page, Brian, Bryan Jones, and you can send me a messenger. I don't know all the terms, but an IM message. You can send me there. You can also reach me by email. We'll put it in the chat as well. And that's bjones@spiritual-empowerment.org. Or you can also reach me on Instagram at BRYANJONESLPC, and that's my tag name on Instagram. And so please reach out, check me out. You can also Google me. Look, Dr. T, they can Google you too. Put Dr. Brian Jones LPC, and I bet you I'll show up under the Joshua Generation, my nonprofit, which is offering grants right now for free therapy with a counseling intern. But Dr. T, in close, I know we got to go, but it is so disheartening to me that I put free counseling out and only have gotten a free grant. If you're in those certain states and meet those for couples or individuals. And I've only gotten one referral for free counseling.
Well, we're going to put it out there now.
That's why we have to do more work. Because if you offering it for free and nobody thinks it's important, we got to continue to do more work. And Dr. T, so that's what I want to say. Do your work. You owe it to yourself to do your work and to invest in mental health, wellness, and to become a preventative congregation. We all are in crisis, but let's be preventative in knowing what to do, the first aid, to give first aid to people that are struggling, ourselves as well as others.
And I hope after this show tonight, you're going to get some more referrals for free.
Hallelujah.
I don't think
we got limited spaces, but we got 10 spaces that we can offer free support. She is a counseling intern at Walden. But I mean, she's really good. She's under my supervision, but she can really offer that support. And we're going to be offering up more grants. This is from my foundation, Spirit, and you can Google us at www.spiritual-empowerment.org. And it's right under my name. If you Google Dr. Brian Jones with the Y, you Google me and reach out. And we want to help communities, help churches be stronger and be prepared for what is already here. And be preventative.
Absolutely.
Owe it to yourself ethically, spiritually, emotionally, and also physically to be ready for real ministry that is already happening in community.
Amen. 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 Thank you, Dr. Brian Jones. Yes. So as we close today's conversation, I hope you all are reminded that caring for the whole person, mind, body, and spirit is not a luxury. It is essential to human flourishing. Faith communities have long been places where people bring their deepest questions, their grief, their struggles, their hopes. When pastoral care, chaplaincy, and professional counseling work together, are integrated, they create spaces where people can be seen, supported, and guided toward healing. I want to thank my guest, my brother, Dr. Brian Jones, for helping us to think more deeply about what it means to integrate spiritual care and mental health in ways that honor both faith and professional wisdom. So before I close, I want you to invite you to join us for our next episode of Talking with Dr. T in April 21st, 2026. My guest will be Dr. Larry L. Anderson Jr. from here in Philadelphia. He will be discussing his new book, his new powerful book, The Cancer Diaries, The Unfiltered Truth of Survivors and Caregivers' Journey Towards Healing and Hope. And in this work, Dr. Anderson shares deeply honest reflections and testimonies that remind us that faith does not remove suffering, but can serve as an anchor through it. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you. God bless you. And I will see you next month.